All right, good afternoon. It's weird to stand all the way up here and talk to you all the way back there, but good afternoon. Hope everybody is doing well and hope you enjoyed your first session of Soul Focus Sunday. I love this day and I love that you are here for this next session. Our speaker today is Jerry Barber. In 1961, Jerry preached his first sermon at the age of 16. He has preached full-time for congregations in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Georgia. Since retiring from local work in 2007, he's completed work as an interim preacher in Hendersonville, Cookeville, Laverne, Maury City, McMinnville, and Nashville, Tennessee, Jeffersonville, Indiana, Sikeston and Pacific, Missouri, and Eddyville, Kentucky. He is married to the former Gail Champion, who's also speaking right now, teaching in another session. And by the way, as of today, they've been married 60 years. So happy anniversary to the two of you. They have 2 children, 6 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. In addition to his local work, Jerry has done work in leadership development. He often consults with elders on how to improve communication, how to develop better relationships with deacons, and how to effectively lead and grow during conflict. And that is what we have the pleasure of getting him to hear him speak about today. I've heard Jerry say from time to time as he's worked with different difficult situations, he says, "I love a good mess." And so you get to hear him talk about something that he loves, he's passionate about, helping people get along. In addition to all of this, he's written books, and he does a great deal of writing on 2 blogs. He also has a new podcast that's out. But the 2 blogs, the websites are newshepherdsorientation.com and betweenpreachers.com. Lots of wisdom on those sites, and lots of wisdom from Brother Jerry. Thank you for being with us.
No, let me tell you, if you were here in the last session, it's going to be the same thing. Nothing new. And ladies, you have the choice between hearing me and my wife. My wife's a lot better, so if you'd like to go hear her. She came out with a new book, and she'll be talking about that today. It's called Fleecy Clouds, One Woman's Story of Surviving and Thriving After Childhood Abuse. I wrote a book 5 years ago on Between Preachers, on interim ministry. And I'll tell you which one's the best. She sold more her first month than I have in 5 years. So that tells you what we're doing. We're talking about conflict and reaching out to other people. What in the world does it have to do with that? Let me tell you what it has had to do with me. There were times in my preaching where I was in a church that was having a fuss. And I would have Bible studies with people, and they were coming along, and they were learning the truth. And we come to that point where we're going to appeal to get them to obey the gospel, baptize them into Christ. And when I do that, I like to go to the church building, stick my hand in the baptistry. That tells me 2 things. If a baptistry is full or empty, is it cold or hot? Check out the men's side. Do they have towels and clothes? Check out the women's side, towels and clothes. Got a key in my pocket. But there were times when I would hope they would be baptized to have their sins forgiven, but I would hope they wouldn't attend the church because we were having a fuss. And you can feel that. Did you know that stuff just oozes out your pores? There's unity. You can experience that, or if there's disunity. I just did a podcast, or maybe it was a chapter in my book. I'm doing my book on Between Preachers for Audible. And sometimes people leave the church. Sometimes they go start a new church. Sometimes they don't know what to do. Usually people come late and leave early because those folks that left are calling every dirty religious word you can think of. And they think there might be a few of them left here, so they're afraid to talk to anybody. And they withhold their contribution and their conversation and their green beans. I've noticed that people bring less to potlucks during a fuss. So you may need to go by Kentucky Fried Chicken if you're having a church fuss. So it has everything to do with how we reach out to other people. I love to be able to tell this is one of the most loving, united group of people I have ever seen in my life. And they will encourage you and help you. And I'll say that if that's the truth. If it's not truth, I'm not going to tell it. I'm not going to tell the other part, but I'm not going to tell it. So what can we do to deal with conflict? The first thing that has been helpful to me is to realize that conflict is normal. Why do we have problems in the church? Because we have people in the church. How long will we have conflict in the church? As long as we have people in the church. Go back to the beginning of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And what happened? He created the world. He created man, took a rib out and made a woman. And guess what? It wasn't long till they had conflict. They were in paradise. You can't get much better than that. There was no air pollution. There was no global warming. There were no Republicans. There were no Democrats. There were no crowded interstates and no in-laws. But in paradise, they had problems and conflict. And if you have problems in paradise, you're going to have problems in the church today. Let me ask you 2 or 3 questions. Who do you believe was the best teacher who ever lived since creation? Who would you guess? Jesus. That'd be my opinion. Who do you think was the best trainer that ever lived? Jesus. See, teaching is imparting information. Training is helping people build good habits and put those into practice. So that's just a part of their personality. Who do you think was the best selector of people? See, one of the keys to having a good business or a good marriage, select the right people to be associated with. I think Jesus was. So he selected Peter, Andrew, James, and John, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew, and so what happened to them? Matthew chapter 20. The mother of Zebedee's 2 sons came up and told Jesus, Jesus, when you come into your kingdom, I want one of my boys sit on your right hand, one on your left hand. And Jesus said, I can't do that. That's not my business. That's Father does those selections. And the 10 heard what the 2 had done, and how did they feel about that? Depending on what translation, they were indignant. They were angry. Mark chapter 9. Verse 33, then he came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, what was it you disputed among yourselves on the road? But they kept silent, for on the road they had disputed among themselves who would be the greatest. I've had a number of people ask me, what's one of the biggest issues that causes problems in the church? It's just the same old thing. Who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom? Are we going to do it my way or your way? Because I think my way is a whole lot better than yours. Luke chapter 22, one of the most interesting passages. Luke says, in Luke 22, verse 24, now there was also a dispute among them as to which of them, guess what, should be considered the greatest. Same old problem. Who's going to be the greatest? And the word there, dispute, is interesting. If I remember correctly, that's the only time that word is used in the whole New Testament. And the word is a compound word, and it means a love of fussing. There was a love. Have you ever met somebody that just seemed like they liked to fuss? That's Peter, Andrew, James, and John, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew. Here's my supposition. If Jesus selected, taught, and trained those men, and they had conflict, and they fussed about who's going to be the greatest, guess what? That's going to happen today. People say, I just can't believe it. We're supposed to establish the church of the New Testament. Yep, that's what it's supposed to. Well, it ought to be that way. What Bible are you reading? What church didn't have conflict in the New Testament? Was it Jerusalem? No, it wasn't Jerusalem. That's where they had the big deal in Acts 15. That's where they brought up the widows were being neglected in the daily distribution, Acts 6. Was it Corinth? Oh, no, man, they had every problem you could name. Was it those 7 churches of Asia? No, it wasn't. So, Why do we have problems in the church? We have people in the church. How long will we have problems in the church? As long as we have people in the church. And so if that's true, then whatever we can learn to deal with that before it gets explosive is time well spent, instead of just wishing it would go away. Let me tell you the way I used to deal with it. I'd get it up to here. I'd try to get everybody straightened out and tell them how to do it, and they wouldn't listen to me. So I get up and preach a fiery sermon and tell them to stop it. Psalm 133, John 17, 1 Corinthians 1:10. Let me show you how effective that is. Here's a parable.
Dr. Switzer?
Yes, come in. I'm just washing my hands.
I'm Catherine Bigman. Janet Carlisle referred me.
Oh, yes. Still being buried alive in a box.
Yes, that's me. Should I lay down?
Oh, no, we don't do that anymore. Just have a seat. And let me tell you a bit about our billing. I charge $5 for the first 5 minutes. And then absolutely nothing after that. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Too good to be true, as a matter of fact.
Well, I can almost guarantee you that our session won't last the full 5 minutes. Now, we don't do any insurance billing, so you would either have to pay in cash or by check.
Wow, okay.
And I don't make change.
All right.
And go.
Go.
Well, tell
What?
me about the problem that you wish to address.
Oh, okay. Well, I have this fear of being buried alive in a box. I start thinking about being buried alive and I begin to panic.
Has anyone ever tried to bury you alive in a box?
No, but truly thinking about it does make my life horrible. I mean, I can't go through tunnels or be in an elevator or in a house, anything boxy.
So what you're saying is you're claustrophobic.
Yes, that's it.
All right, well, let's go, Catherine. I'm going to say 2 words to you right now. I want you to listen to them very, very carefully. Then I want you to take them out of the office with you and incorporate them into your life.
Well, shall I write them down?
Well, if it makes you comfortable, it's just 2 words. We find most people can remember them.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, here they are. Stop it!
I'm sorry?
Stop it!
Stop it?
Yes, S-T-O-P, new word, I-T.
So, what are you saying?
You know, it's funny. I say 2 simple words, and I cannot tell you the amount of people who say exactly the same thing you're saying. I mean, this is not Yiddish, Catherine. This is English. Stop it.
So, I should just stop it.
There you go. I mean, you don't want to go through life being scared of being buried alive in a box, do you? I mean, that sounds frightening.
It is.
Then stop it.
I can't. I mean, it's been with me since childhood.
No, we don't go there. Just stop it.
So I should just stop being afraid of being buried alive in a box.
You got it. Good go. Well, it's only been 3 minutes, so that will be $3.
Actually, I only have a 5, so
Well, I don't make change.
then I guess I'll take the full 5 minutes.
Fine. All right. Well, what other problems would you like to address?
I'm bulimic. I stick my fingers down my throat.
Stop it! Nut of some kind? Don't do that.
but I'm compelled to. My mom used to call me fatty.
No, we don't go there.
But I've been having this dream.
No, we don't go there either.
But my horoscope did say...
We definitely don't go there. Just stop it. What else?
Well, I have self-destructive relationships with men.
Stop it! You want to be with a man, don't you?
Yes.
Well, then stop it. Don't be such a big baby.
I wash my hands a lot.
That's all right.
It is?
I wash my hands all the time. There's a lot of germs out there. Yeah, don't worry about that one.
I'm afraid to drive.
Well, stop it! How are you going to get around? Get in the car and drive, you kook. Stop it!
You stop it! You stop it!
What's the problem, Catherine?
I don't like this. I don't like this therapy at all. You're just telling me to stop it.
And you don't like that?
No, I don't.
So you think we're moving too fast? Is that it?
Yes. Yes, I do.
All right, then let me give you 10 words that I think will clear everything up for you. You want to get a pad and a pencil for this one?
All right.
Are you ready? All right, here are the 10 words. Stop it, or I'll bury you alive in a box!
Have you ever used that approach to conflict management? Just tell everybody, stop it. Stop it. Conflict comes when anxiety rises. And generally that comes from a controller-controllee relationship. I went to a workshop one time and the topic was, how can we have unity in churches of Christ? And the person who was leading the discussion made it very clear. It is easy for us to have unity in all area churches of Christ if you'll do everything like I tell you to do it. And if you don't do anything that I don't like. Yep, that'd be pretty easy. Just stop it. But the best thing I can do is to realize that dealing with conflict is hard work. James 1:5 says, if you lack wisdom, ask God and He'll give it to you. Well, that sounds pretty easy. Yeah, but that's part of it. Need to read everything the Bible says. He says, pray in James 1:5. Proverbs 2:1-5 says, if we want wisdom, you have to work at it like you're working for money and search for it like you were searching for buried treasure. I've tried both of those. Those are hard works. It's hard. But then I also need to understand that when I understand it correctly, working for unity is pretty easy. It's found in Romans 12, verse 18. 3 sections. If it is possible, as much as it depends on you, live peaceably with all men. What does that say? If it's possible. Sometimes it isn't possible. Generally, what I have observed in myself and some other human beings, when I try to negotiate peace, I try to get everybody to understand it just like me, and if you'd agree with me, man, we'd have it made. Sometimes it's not possible. As much as it depends on you. Sometimes I can do everything I know to do, and there's still going to be problems. And so I don't need to get discouraged. A lot of people get discouraged if they're not comfortable. Paul wrote the book of Philippians from a dirty, stinking Roman jail. John McRae wrote in a magazine several years ago, he described what that meant. Usually before they went into prison, they were beaten bloody, and they didn't get a shower and a new suit of clothes when they went in and put their feet in stocks. The bathrooms, the latrines were very nasty, and it stunk. And many people begged to die, and some committed suicide. But with those conditions, he wrote to the people at Philippi and said, I'm in jail, and I hope y'all not getting discouraged because things are going really good here. Well, Paul, you got some preachers that are really critical of you. He said, yeah. Some preach Christ of love and goodwill, and some out of envy and strife. Well, Paul, how are you going to respond to that? He said, I thought about that, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to rejoice. Because even though they have some ugly attitudes and they're trying to make it hard on me, they are preaching Christ. That's what I'm going to do today. What are you going to do in the future? Yes, I will rejoice. And then later in the book, he said, I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. I like what Mr. Edward Friedman says in his book, Generation to Generation. We never get a problem that we can handle, because if we could handle it, it wouldn't be a problem. And some things aren't problems, they're situations. If something cannot be changed, then it's not a problem, because you can't change the temperature of the outside today. A lot of things we can't change, and so then we get to work on ourselves. And as Paul said, I learned to be content, whatever state I am. When I read that, I always think of my friend Bonnie. We lived in Kentucky, and this family had recently moved to Indiana. And after 3 or 4 years, they moved back and became some of our dearest friends. But when they moved back, she'd say, I just don't like Indiana. I can't stand Indiana. I hope I never have to go back and live in Indiana. Well, I could understand. Maybe it wasn't some things she didn't like, but she kept on. And finally I said, Bonnie. Paul said, I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. She said, yep, Paul never lived in Indiana. I think Paul could have learned to be content in Indiana, whatever state I am. And so I work on me, and what does that do? That lowers my anxiety. It takes 2 people to fuss. Have you ever noticed that? If one won't cooperate, you can't have a good fuss. And so what I want to work on is my attitude and my responses, and sometimes a good response is no response. A good response certainly should be a calm response, not tit for tat, and you hit me and I'll hit you twice, and then 3 and 4, and we got a big one going. So if it's possible, as much as it depends on me, live peaceably with all men. Another verse that's been very, very helpful to me, and I try to embed that into the very pores of my skin and my attitude, is why do people do what they do? Have you seen people do hurtful, horrible things? You probably experienced that. Have you noticed? You know why people do that? They do it because they think that's the best thing for them to do today. How do I know? The Bible tells me so. Proverbs 21, verse 2. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. Not everything is right, but every way is right to a man in his own eyes. That's the reason. Have you ever done something you thought was the best thing to do and it turned out to be not good at all? Anybody ever done that? Said something? Oops, wish I hadn't said that. I thought it was right, but I messed it up. Yeah, that's the way other people do it. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes. And so if a person is doing the best they know how to do today, then why should I be aggravated at them? Maybe if I could model for them, and maybe if I could be calm and find an opportunity to teach them, they might learn a better way. I need to deal with my anxiety. Conflict starts with an anxious person acting out, and then it is escalated by another person reacting and acting out. And so if I can learn to cut the power off it can de-escalate the fuss. Ephesians 4:26. Be angry, do not sin, do not let the sun go down on your wrath. You ever had anybody say, you ought to feel that way? Where'd you get that? I understand that we have a right to all of our feelings. I used to talk about good feelings and bad feelings. I try not to use those adjectives anymore. I think there are pleasant feelings and painful feelings, but all feelings are good. In reading some of the books, Philip Yancey and Dr. Brand worked with leprosy. One of the curses of leprosy is that people get numb, they lose feeling. And so he told about a baby that bite his finger off and the blood come out and just have the bigger time fingerprinting on the wall, and it didn't hurt any at all. One of the greatest curses is not to have pain. All feelings are good for us. They're pleasant and they're unpleasant, but they're no good and bad. We ought to get angry. Where'd you learn that? Mark 3:5. Jesus looked about them with anger, being grieved because of the hardness of their heart. Ephesians 4:26. Be angry. Don't sin. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath. Another thing that I am a connoisseur of are rules. Family rules. Family is any group. It may be your family, your church, your business, or your softball teams. Family rules are usually unconscious, unspoken, understood, and contradictory. Unconscious, we generally don't think about our rules. Unspoken, we usually don't talk about our rules. Understood means if you break a rule, you're going to be in serious trouble. But you didn't tell me. Yeah, but anybody with 1 eye and a half cents ought to know better than what you just did. And then many times they are contradictory. There's the principle here and the principle here, and which one am I going to apply? So I find that helpful. I think we need to figure out our own rules. What is my purpose in life? What am I shooting for? What are my goals? What am I trying to accomplish? And then I need to hold myself accountable on how to get there. If I'm leading groups or participate in leading groups, what I like to do is negotiate the rules. When I go to a new church, we've been doing interim ministry 17 years. And if you don't know what interim ministry is, here's my elevator speech. Many times when a preacher stays a long time, the church doesn't like the next preacher. I volunteer to be the one they don't like, and during the 6 to 18 months that we stay, Gail and work with them, they're able to grieve the loss of their last preacher and gain wisdom on how to select the next preacher. First thing I do, I preach one sermon, and then sermons 2 through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I tell them my rules. Tell them my communication rules, name memory rules, criticism rules, have all those rules. Here's the way I operate. I use email, text. I'm on Facebook and Twitter. I do not do counseling, serious Bible study on any of those. I use email and text to say where you want to eat and what time you want me to show up, factual things. But anything that has emotion in it, I'm not going to communicate that way. So it gives an opportunity for people to do that. One of the things that I learned at the University of Hard Knocks is that when you are in a long-term serious relationship, it's good to write down your rules. First church I went to never had a full-time preacher. I was just out of college, out of Lipscomb, 1967. I'd never preached full-time. So between us, we shared a lot of ignorance. I'd been there about a year, and I asked the elders, I said, would it be okay if I took a week off during Christmas and go visit? They said, sure, be glad for you to. I said, good. And the Sunday before I left, one of the elders got up, and he had a big smile on his face. He said, Brother Jerry, said, we've taken up some money, and we'd like for you to have this, $30 in cash. Gail said, Jerry, what are you going to do with your $30? I said, I would like to buy a new pair of Sunday shoes. Every time it rains, my feet get soaking wet. There are holes in the bottom of the soles of both my shoes, and they're not worth fixing. She said, I'd like for you to have some new shoes too. How are we going to make a car payment? I said, it's in the budget. She said, they won't pay us while we're gone. I said, sure they will. She said, no, they won't. I said, sure they will. She said, you wait and see. Guess who was right? Gail was right. So I came back, and sure enough, after 2 or 3 weeks, I hadn't received a check for that week. And I asked the elders, what is your policy on preacher having a week or 2 off with pay? And they said, we ain't never had a preacher, and we ain't got no policy. And during that very spiritual discussion, one of the elders said he didn't do nothing, don't give him nothing. They said, that sounds like a good idea. What did I learn from that? You know, the best time to work out your rules is before you get into a relationship. And so the next place I went, they had a lot of preachers, and so they told me, here's the way we've been doing it. Is this all right with you? We'll give you 4 weeks to hold gospel meetings. We'll give you 2 weeks for vacation. We'll send you to 1 lectureship a year. If we decide for you to go or you decide to go, we'll pay you for 90 days or until you find a new place to preach, whichever comes first. Man, isn't that great? Got it made. I'm there 8 years. It's time for me to relocate. I'm going out and trying out pretty frequently during that time. And at one of the meetings, one of the men said, are we paying Jerry every Sunday? He's going out and running around all over the country trying to find a job. And the treasurer said, yeah, we pay him every week. They said, how about that, Jerry? Is that fair? And I said, yeah. When I came and I named the elders, I said, here was our agreement. 2 of those elders had died. 1 had resigned, but he was in the meeting. Brother so-and-so, what about that? And here's what he said. Seemed like we talked about that, but I don't remember what we said. Wow, didn't that make me look good? What did I learn from that? Not only do you need to have the agreements, you need to write the agreements. Well, I don't think that's very spiritual. Back in my daddy's day, a man's word was at bond. You could just shake hands with a man, that's all. Man, if that worked out for your daddy, I'm tickled. But what I've learned from that, the only people who do not need to write down their agreements are people who are never going to forget anything and never going to die. And they need to be working with people who will never forget anything and never die. Otherwise, you better write it down. Write it down. Both parties have a signed copy. I scan that and put it in Dropbox. I send it then to iCloud. I have 3 hard drives that I rotate once a month. I've got 1 in the batter's box, 1 in the computer. At the 1st of September, I'll take the 1 out of the computer. I'll take that down to River Road where my friend Paul Daugherty preaches. He'll put it there. It'll be off-site. Hopefully, fire, tornado will not hit both places at the same time. And then put the original in your safety deposit box. If you don't do it, and you just trust memory, everybody's going to think somebody got cheated because they remember it differently. So, job descriptions, contracts. I did the 26th session of New Shepherds Orientation last weekend at Fairlane in Shelbyville, Tennessee. In fact, this is the 3rd time I've been with that congregation. They're the ones that got it started back in 2013. Henry Wilhoit called and said, Jerry, we've appointed 5 elders, 4 of them never served a day in their life. You think you could put some things together to let them know what they're getting into? And I said, I'll try to throw something together. And we went up to Gatlinburg to his cabin. We spent 6 hours on Friday and 6 on Saturday, and I've been doing those since that time. And one of the things I really encourage you, write down the way you're going to relate in this group. Well, why should you have to do that? Because people are different. And everybody thinks their way is right. I've learned more probably from premarital counseling than any college class I ever had in leadership or anything else. When a couple comes to me, one of the things I do to help them fulfill Genesis 2:24, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall be one flesh. How do you leave home? How do you leave father and mother? The way I encourage them to do it is go shopping in your home of origin. I have 5 pages of questions to write down their family rule. Oh, we didn't write down. I know you didn't write it down because they're usually unconscious, unspoken, understood, and contradictory. But write down, because you'll recognize it, what were your rules for time? Where I grew up, Daddy's rule was anytime you're going anywhere, leave in time to have a flat tire. If you don't have a flat tire, you'll be early, and if you do, you'll still be on time. Some people's rule is we're going to be 15 minutes late. I don't care what time it starts. Just let us know we're going to come in 15 minutes late. Well, those are two different sets of rules. That causes conflict when you get those. What were your dress rules? What were your attitudes toward authority? What were your money rules? Did you spend everything you had and then what you'd make for the next 15, 20 years? And you're behind all the time? Did you pay cash? What did you do? What were your rules? What were your rules? What were your conflict rules? My observation is many times pouters marry shouters. Wow. We got one, their lip drags to the ground and they won't say anything. They're just pouting. The other one said, if you'd pick your lip up off the floor and tell me what's on your mind, we could settle this thing in 3 minutes. But you sit there and don't say anything. How you think we're ever going to get it straightened out? And she thinks if you were a Christian and didn't shout and get angry like that, we wouldn't have any trouble. Yeah? That's two different rules. Guess what? Both of them thinks theirs is the best. If that happens with two people, when you have 3 elders, 5 elders, 10 elders, guess what? They all grew up in homes with different rules. And if you don't talk about what is this group going to do, how are we going to relate to each other, I have documents from elder expectation. First time I ever saw this was at Highland. We have their preacher here and teaching a class here. They had job description for elders. Here's what we expect of elders. That's the way we operate. Elders' rules of engagement, leadership decision policies. It just cuts down when we say, yep, we'll agree to that and we'll do it. We need to ask for wisdom in dealing with clashing or what seems to be contradictory rules. And I'm talking about Bible rules. For instance, in Matthew 6, 3 and 4, do not let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. Had an elder. He was a prosperous man, and so once a year he took a group of workers and one of the groups in the church, fed them a nice dinner. I was writing a thank you note to him to be put in the bulletin. He said, oh, no. Do not mention my name. I don't want anybody to know that I do anything like that because the Bible says don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. I said, yep. It says that, Matthew 6. Matthew 5:16 says, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. If you're my leader and I'm following you on a dark night and you turn off all your lights, I'm either going to run into you or you get so far ahead of me, I'll never find my way out of where we're going. What are you going to do with those? What do you do about, here's my favorite, Proverbs 24 or 26, verses 3 and 4. Listen to this. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest you also be like him. Okay, so when you meet a fool, what are you going to do? Don't answer a fool like he talks. Okay? Good. Verse 5, answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own. Wait a minute. You said don't answer. I said, yeah. And then you said answer a fool according to his folly. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? We asked Brother G.K. Wallace, teaching a Bible class at Free, Brother Wallace, what can we do? He said, well, you got to stop and think, what kind of fool are you working with? And so you'll know which one to apply if you'll stop and think. One of the things that can lower our anxiety is not immediately responding to irritation. Sometimes we think he said it and I'll also get it back to you, and I'm not listening to you, I'm thinking I believe I can get you back and I'll get you. No, let me think about that a while. Could I pray about that a day after tomorrow? Could we get together? See, that lowers your anxiety. You're not under pressure anymore. You don't have to say what you wished you had said, but you didn't think about saying. Work on your rules as you consider getting married or working with the church. I've told you. Another thing I like to do is I give them some assignments and I say, Write 12 to 15 reasons why you want to marry this person, and then tell me what you're bringing to this marriage that will make it work. And they come in, and it's one of the most ooey gooey, sweetest sessions you've ever had. She's beautiful, she's wise, she's smart, and just on and on and on. And they do that, and I said, wonderful. Now, here's pop quiz. They haven't had any time to tell one thing about the other person you don't like. You think you'll be able to fix it in 6 months, but you won't. How are you going to put up with it? Now, they can think of it, but they got to think about what can I say and not get in serious trouble. See, I think you need to do that before you get married. You need to do that before you hire a preacher. A preacher needs to do that before he goes to a church. What is it you like? Well, I don't know. Well, you don't know him well enough then. There's no perfect person on earth since Jesus. There's some things you can put up with and some things you can't. If you can't, don't do it. Best time to find out is before you get married or before you hire a U-Haul. David Sain used to preach a sermon on the best time to get a divorce before you get married. And so there needs to be that thinking. I need some people to do this. I've started a new podcast, and you podcasters, if you would check it out, it's called, if you'd pass those out. Could somebody do one on this side? It's called Gleaning Mustard Seeds. The first rule is try not to learn very much. And that'll be easy with me doing the talking, and they're only about 10 minutes each. But you'll find some more of these principles. Another suggestion that's been helpful to me since the 1980s. Develop a good relationship with a good Christian counselor. First time I met a counselor, I was scared to death. I'd never talked to a counselor. I didn't want to talk to him. I didn't want him asking me questions. I didn't want him figuring me out, but I got to know him, and he's blessed me tremendously. And Gail's talking about him in the next room because he helped her work through some childhood trauma, and now she's able to tell her story and help a lot of other people. I recommend in premarital counseling, get a counselor before you need a counselor. Before you have any problems, go see one. And then when you have problems, you already know the fellow, you don't have to be scared of it. You know he's okay. When we moved to Nashville, Gail quickly got a family doctor. She said, Jerry, you need to get a family doctor. I said, I'm not sick. A few months ago by, she said, Jerry, you need to get you a family. I said, no, I don't need a doctor. I'm not sick. I do my best Bible study and thinking while I'm running. And one day it occurred to me, if I were to get run over by a Big Mac truck or have a heart attack, it'd really be good to have a doctor in Nashville that knew my blood pressure. I'd hate to be brought in the emergency room and every doctor looked down and said, depart from me, I never knew you. And so I got a family doctor. The best time to get a family doctor is before you get sick. Best time to get a counselor is before you need a counselor. Elders, preachers, Christians will never be able to solve everybody else's problems. And so we need to know how to refer people when they need help with their problems. And so I suggest that to elders and preachers and all Christians. So, how can I deal with conflict in the church to reach out better to other people? I need to work on Jerry Barber. Be at peace with God, peace with others. And then I don't have all these things popping up that comes out in my Bible study and I throw it all over the place to other people. If it is possible, as much as it depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for the people who have arranged it. Thank you for the people who are here. Father, help us to get a mustard seed. Help us to learn one principle that we might study and incorporate into our lives and be able to be a more peaceful, contented, effective evangelist. Help us to reach out to other people and help them with the issues that come up in their life, especially their relationship to God. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
If anybody didn't get to take the Lord's Supper this morning, the bell's about to ring, and you can be served in the room behind the library. Brother Jerry, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.